Thank you. That was the next question. I'm going to yield to Senator Warnock.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the nominees. Here today, we have before the committee 3 outstanding and historic nominees to the Federal Reserve who are all eminently qualified to apply their efforts to abide by the Fed's dual mandate to maximize employment and manage inflation. They will further help the board reflect the diversity of our great nation and are also all ready to maintain the safety and the soundness of our financial system. Georgia banks are sound in terms of their expertise to lend to their communities, but they're having to carefully navigate higher rates and maintain consumers' or customers' confidence following the failures of banks in other parts of the country. With higher interest rates and tightening credit conditions, small businesses especially are having trouble finding loans to help fund their growth. Meanwhile, the giant banks are spending billions on buybacks, while their consumer and small business banking revenue has sharply increased, taking money straight from Georgia's communities and delivering it to their wealthy shareholders. Dr. Cook, what actions is the Federal Reserve taking to ensure small businesses are not facing needless restraints on credit?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator, and it was a pleasure to speak with you in your office yesterday. The way we approach financial stability is to think about the optimization problem, as any economist would, and the trade-offs associated with optimizing supervision and regulation. Certainly, we don't think that community banks, for example, should be burdened with the kind of regulation that you might see for larger banking institutions. And those are the ones that typically fund small businesses. And this is why I am particularly concerned about the bank stress that has been concentrated among the regional banks that typically fund small businesses, for example. So what we're doing in terms of financial stability is to monitor very closely the ongoing effects of bank stress and making sure to monitor and making sure that the system stays sound and resilient. And I am a big supporter of the diversity of the financial system, the diversity and sizes of financial institutions. And community banks especially have deep roots in their communities and know their clients very well. So I think that's the major way that the Federal Reserve is supporting small businesses and small institutions.
I think you're right about the importance of community banks, and just to push a little more, so what support has the Federal Reserve provided small lending institutions in the wake of these collapses?
We are reviewing, as a part of Vice Chair Barr's holistic review of not just capital standards, but also this review that was already published of SVB, to learn the lessons of the failure of SVB. So I think that's one of the major things, and then to translate that into concrete steps, and that's what we're doing. So I sit on the subcommittee on smaller regional banks and community banks, and we are actively discussing the ways in which we learn the lessons and make sure that this monitoring is happening so that that part of the financial system and all of the financial system stays sound and resilient.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kugler, how would your experience at the World Bank inform your work on the Federal Reserve Board to support small businesses?
Thank you for that question, Senator Warnock. You know, it's interesting because just like we're experiencing inflation today here in the U.S. At alarming levels, that inflation is even higher if you look at around the world. Inflation in a place like Lebanon is 200%. Inflation at a place like Zimbabwe is 60%, 50% in Argentina, 35% in Turkey. So you see it throughout the world in different regions, and it's certainly much more pronounced everywhere else in the world. these are issues I have had to work with. On the other side, the recovery from the pandemic was something that I also worked on at the World Bank, and I have worked on at the World Bank. And part of that help was not only helping households, but it was helping small and medium-sized businesses recover from the pandemic or stay afloat through the pandemic so that the private sector could thrive. And when the time came to get out of the pandemic that was so painful to all of us throughout the world, then the private sector could continue to hire those households and workers that very much needed that help after the pandemic. So I have worked both on the recovery side as well as on the inflation side more recently, which just like here in the US was experienced because of supply chain disruptions, because of people withdrawing out of the labor force, and all of these exacerbated by Russia's war on Ukraine. So that has been felt even more in other continents, in other parts of the world, and I have worked very actively on all of those important issues, in particular in terms of supporting small and medium-sized businesses.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.